Welcome to Notable Content. I'm at, oh, sorry, we're gonna restart that. I thought I was
We're
gonna be
we're
fine without the
no
stumble. Here we
no
go.
we're keeping that in. Sorry.
Welcome to Notable Content. We are Alex.
And SJ Herschel, we're just gonna give you an update on what's been going on today.
Let's get into it.
Herschel, Herschel, Herschel. Alex, how are you doing? It's kind of been a while. I think like almost 3 weeks since we've uploaded, and then considering the time it'll take for me to edit this, our community has been deprived.
They have been. They have been. Which is
Why?
why today's episode is going to be about just about everything under the sun, because we got a lot to talk about that we haven't had a chance to yet. But I'm good. How are you?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Um, we're rocking the robe today. Sorry, I'm not more decent. I'm just kind of tired and I took a shower, so
I was gonna ask about it, then I was like, oh, maybe he doesn't want to talk about it. But yeah, no, it's
sorry,
it's
yeah.
definitely a style.
I'm gonna call myself out before anyone else can. Just as a heads up, this is our first time doing it over Zoom, and Zoom has a recording limit, and I'm too cheap to pay premium or whatever it is. So we're probably gonna have to cut this video at some point when it stops recording, and then we'll just resume. But I'll just clip the things together so you guys probably won't even notice. Um, should I just go right into this thing?
Well, before we get into that, we actually
Oh,
have a
yes, you're
question of
right.
the week.
You're right. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
From the Discord, Zaruma asks, "What is the best sandwich?"
Um, dang. Do you have one that comes to your mind like immediately? That's kind of hard, actually.
Um, yeah, I mean, I have two that I really like. First off, is kind of a cop out because I don't think it really when Zaruma asked what the best sandwich is, I'm pretty sure he wasn't thinking about this in mind. I love a good chicken sandwich. Like if I am going out to eat somewhere and it's somewhere I've never been and they have a chicken sandwich, that is probably what I will end up getting. Um,
It's hard to go wrong with that.
I love a good chicken sandwich. But if we're talking a little bit more, you know, traditional, so to speak, like I do like a club sandwich. It's nice turkey, lettuce, bacon. Sometimes with tomatoes, sometimes not. It's kind of dependent how I'm feeling. I'm not crazy about tomatoes on my sandwiches just because I don't like it when it makes the bread soggy. But if I know
Mm-hmm.
a place does it in a way where the bread doesn't get soggy because of how they prep their tomatoes, then I'm
Right.
good at tomato and
Okay.
some avocado. Mm.
Can I tell you something about avocado?
Let's hear it.
Did I tell you I'm allergic to it now?
You're allergic to avocados.
Yeah. And I've become more and more sensitive over the years. And now, if I eat avocado, like the interior of my mouth starts hurting, like stings bad.
That is insanely unfortunate.
It sucks. If it's guacamole and like there's enough other stuff mixed into it, it's okay. But yeah, it sucks.
Okay, so
But
you're not like at risk of like
I won't die.
choking or like breaking out into something crazy. It just is uncomfortable.
It hurts. And
It
I get
hurts.
it's like
Okay.
the same kind of thing that I get from when I eat like too many raw tomatoes and stuff. And one time I've overeaten and like the skin in my mouth will start bleeding. Like blood will just start coming out.
So how much avocado does it take to like if you were to just if there was an avocado
Oh
and you were to
yeah.
take like a single slice out of a half of an avocado, is that going to be enough to like make it painful or
Yes.
wow, that is really unfortunate, man. I'm really sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it sucks. Cause I came around to liking avocado like post mission like my mission, you know? This was like 2015. I started like appreciating avocado. And here we
Uh,
are, like less than a decade later. It's like, oh, sorry, nope, you can't eat it.
dang.
But that's a good that those are good choices. I like those
What about
sandwiches you
you?
picked
What's your
there.
go-to sandwich?
Uh, I'm gonna have to say like, it's they're named different things depending on where you go, but I'd have to say the spicy Italian type choice.
Okay.
The one that's got like the salami and the kind of like spiced meat stuff on there.
Right.
And you've got the jalapeno peppers
Hmm.
necessary. Um, that's gonna be my go-to. There's one in particular from Jimmy John's. It's like so good. Yeah.
Yeah. I do like a good spicy Italian, for lack of a better term. It's good stuff.
I think that's like Subway's
That's
naming scheme,
right.
yeah. But
Yeah.
also I just wanted to say that Grape Bird, our famous Twitch streamer, was playing D&D with the family upstairs, so he says hi. He said he couldn't join us. They went out to get some food. Also Nicholas, one of our supporters,
Hmm.
and Christian was here too. So shout out to all you guys.
Man, the whole
Also,
squad.
also shout out to Josh. Um, he's a good kid. I know him. He's a good friend of mine, and he has listened to every single one of our episodes, despite discovering us relatively later.
Right.
He downloaded everything, and he asked for a shout out in an episode, and so here it is.
There you go. Oh, we also want to shout out Jack. Jack is a new addition to the Discord who's become pretty active over the last
Yeah,
weeks.
thanks for joining us.
Yeah, glad to have you. Glad to hear that you're enjoying the episodes, and thanks for being a part of the downloadable content community, because it makes our job a lot easier when we have people who are chatting and talking and keeping people engaged. So we appreciate it a lot.
I think that's it, yeah.
Yeah, let's get into it. We got a
Um,
lot of stuff to talk about.
so here we go. I played the Princess Peach Showtime demo.
Hmm.
I've expressed my interest in that game. I was like kind of excited that they're doing something different with Peach.
Right.
Just different in general, and Nintendo doesn't do that very often. Um, it wasn't my cup of tea, and I almost kind of expected it because the marketing and everything, it was very, I think it's marketed toward a relatively young demographic, which is totally fine. I think it's something that um, my little sister would totally enjoy. It's very charming. It's very charming. Um, the good, simple game mechanics. It's fun to play. It really is. It's just not something that I think I would go out of my way to spend money on and play. Um, Try out the demo though. I like that Nintendo did that and see if it's your cup of tea. I know that actually, can I read this from our Discord?
Of course.
Quathorn, he gave us his thoughts on it, and I'll just read right off here. Been playing Princess Peach Showtime, and I like it a lot. It leans a bit toward the girly side. They said the word sparkle over 30 times in the first 15 minutes of dialogue, but what's to be expected from a Peach game? Yep. They play it off as a joke sometimes too. The first boss uses powers called Darkle, and I think that's hilarious. I really like the theater aspect of it. The levels, I think there's a typo in there, and plays so the scenery is all cardboard and stuff. So the setting is like a play, performance and stuff. Reminds me of Paper Mario, and all the enemies are puppets held up by strings. Me and uh Me and fiance's headcanon is that all the Theets, the good guys kind of like that kind of look like toads, are just very committed to the play and they're not in actually any danger. Overall fun game, fun dialogue, and good mix of mechanics. Um so he's someone that it sounds like he actually bought the game and is playing it. So he probably has a bit more insight than I do in terms of how the game actually plays out.
Right. Is there like a
Um,
story mode, or is it just kind of like you choose your different Peach costume and kind of play through
so from what
or it
what
coded?
from what I played, it's fairly linear. I think it's just the very beginning of the game. You go through like different sections, and for you're playing as the sword Peach, you're playing as the baker Peach, and then solve these like little things and beat up the bad guys. But from what I have heard online, it does open up a bit more later, probably
Mm,
like past the demo part, where it gives you more freedom to kind of like do different things. So,
okay,
um, but yeah, interesting.
there you go. Nice.
Um, do you want to go next?
Yeah. So I bought Pokemon Pearl and I beat it within a week.
Wait, that happened.
We haven't talked about that on
We
the
haven't
pod
talked about that.
yet.
Holy crap.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
happened a while ago. Um,
That's the fastest I've ever seen you beat a game, I think.
a week.
And it's not even like a short game,
No, no, I
right?
mean it took me almost 30 hours. So I got this game at the perfect time. I got it and I had just finished up some midterms at school, so I didn't have any homework over the weekend.
Mm,
And my wife was out of town for half the weekend. So, um, I got home from work on Friday. Well, actually, I got the game early Friday morning, started playing it before my half day shift. Went
hmm
to work, came back, played more, and then spent most of Saturday playing it. And then got a good chunk of time on Sunday. And then it was actually the next day was President's Day. Yeah, that was a month ago. Wow, that's nuts. Um, and so that Monday didn't have anything to do. No homework, no work, no nothing. And my wife was sick, so we couldn't do anything fun. So she was
hmm
resting, recuperating. So I was playing more Pokemon. And yeah, within 4 days of starting the game, I'd beaten Cynthia. Um, and then I spent the next few days going in and catching all the starters because once you beat Cynthia, you can catch all the starters from gens 1 through 4. So I went ahead and caught all of them, evolved them all, as well as all the pseudo legendaries that I could. So I finally got a Metagross. I finally got a Salamence. Actually, I think I've had a Salamence before, but this was my first time with a Metagross. And just some other cool Pokies that I wanted. Went ahead and got them all leveled up so they're all fully evolved and everything. And yeah, it was awesome. I was
Did it
everything that I was
did it
looking forward to.
scratch the Pokemon itch that you've been
Oh yeah.
having for a while?
Oh yeah. And I love having a version of the Sinnoh region because I've explained this many, many times. Pokemon Pearl was my first game,
Hmm
my first Pokemon game. And then we had Pokemon Platinum, but Pokemon Platinum was my older brother's. And it was kind of tough because, on the DS cartridges, you can only have one save file. So if you want to replay it, you got to delete
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
And there would be times where my brother had finished a run and he really liked his team. And he was like, I really don't want you to erase my stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
That's-
so, but having a version that is mine, again, because I had misplaced Pearl, and having it readily available. And now, if I want to play it again, I don't have to delete the Pokemon that I used. I could just make another user on the Switch and then play it there. So
Do you think you'll do that at some point? Couple years maybe?
maybe I wouldn't be surprised
Mm.
because of how much I love this inner region, but I definitely won't ever delete this group of Pokemon because they're like some of my Pokemon had like perfect natures too. Like my Milotic had the perfect nature. My Torterra has the perfect nature.
Just by luck? Or
So
did you farm for them?
so for my Milotic, I caught 5 before I got a female with the nature that I wanted. So it didn't take very long.
Dang, that's pretty lucky.
Right. And yeah, my Torterra, I got the perfect nature on just on that first selection.
Holy cow.
Um,
When I'm
so
doing
yeah,
like a casual playthrough, I typically, if I get a nature that's like good enough, I'll like take it.
I I will take, yes, that is the case for most times. With my Logic though, the way that you catch it in Pearl is it only spawns on a few tiles each day. So once you find a tile, you can just continue to fish on that same tile and it'll continue to give you Feebasses.
Okay, is that process as brutal as it was in Gen 3? Because it was so hard to get it, dude. Like
So
finding that one tile.
not exactly. Um, However, you do have to wait 48 real-time hours. You have to go to a city, you get a lottery number, you write that number down,
Mm-hmm.
and then you go back 24 hours later and get a second lottery number, you write that down, and then you go to the great internet site called Google and search
Mm-hmm.
eBash generator. You put those two codes in, and it'll show you which tiles it could possibly spawn on. And since there's only four, you don't have to spend a whole bunch of time checking. You just kind of move around and go find it. And
Thank
then
you
once
for
you
the
find it,
internet.
no, seriously, without the internet, I wouldn't have gotten it. Like it would
Yeah.
not have been worth experimenting because there's like 200 tiles in that one lake, and having to check all of them every single day, mm-mm,
No.
not gonna happen. Plus, it only has a 50% chance. So
Right, so
even
you
if you
can
were to,
miss it.
so if you were to check every single tile, it could just be that on the tiles you got the wrong flip. So
Oh,
yeah, not
jeez.
doing that. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. I know a lot of people have issues with the Pearl and Diamond remix because they're too similar to the originals and didn't incorporate enough from Platinum. I didn't have that issue. I had a great time, but I wouldn't be surprised if some of our loyal listeners had similar sentiments to people who weren't a huge fan of it. But I
Mm-hmm.
had a great time.
I'm so glad to hear that, man.
Thanks.
That's I I want to play Arceus.
Dude.
'Cause like, we got
Mm,
this new one coming out
you
and
have to. Like,
do you have it?
no, I borrowed it from my older brother.
Yeah. I should just buy it, I guess.
I
Do you
I
think I'd like it?
I think you would. I think as someone who just loves the Pokemon formula, but also wants it to be a bit more challenging and a little bit more experimental, I think it's a near perfect fit for you. The only thing that would make it better is if it like took place in your favorite region.
Yeah, I honestly don't really care about regions too much.
Well, then there you go. Then I don't think you would have I think you'd have a great time with it.
The thing that appeals to me the most is that you can like swap moves on the fly, right?
Hmm.
Like that is crazy to me. That's amazing.
No.
Okay.
It's
I'm gonna look into it, see how
that was
much
the
they
first
are.
game I played when I got home from my mission, and it was a good one. It's one of the
Oh,
best Pokemon games.
isn't it your like favorite? Didn't you say that at one point? Like
If
you
I
think
did,
it's the best Pokemon game ever made? I
I do think it's the best. I don't think it's
yeah.
my favorite.
Oh,
It's in my
like yeah,
like top
personally.
two or three, but it
Yeah.
is the best one that they have made.
All right, I better get on that shoot.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Who needs Dragon Quest 11? Just play more Pokemon.
Okay, can I? Oh, so this wasn't on my list, but I'm gonna talk about that for a minute because I have
Let's
some
hear
thoughts.
it.
So like I've been playing Dragon Quest 11. I don't remember whether I talked about it last episode. Um, I like it. It's fun. I'm at the point where like I have everybody in I've got all the party members now. I'm done recruiting. Now I'm like going along, with the story and stuff. The combat's good, it's traditional RPG. It's exactly what you'd expect. But like it's struggling to keep me interested. I don't know. And I think it's my fault. I mean, at the end of the day, like all these things are subjective, but it's perfect for the Steam Deck. It's such a good mobile game, and that's how I choose to play it. But I don't know. Maybe part of it is that I just don't have as much time these days to spend like 100 plus hours in an RPG. And part of it also is that when I do play, I do have a good time every time. Like I never regret booting up the game when I do, but like I know exactly what the combat's going to be like. It's turn-based. It's not modern, it is what it is. And so you're either gonna love that or not. And I think the thing that but like Pokemon is the same way in terms of combat. It's turn-based, you pick your moves, you attack and stuff. But what makes it different for me is like Pokemon has the excitement of like, oh, I'm always gonna be like looking for that new Pokemon or like evolving or, getting this one new move that like completely changes everything. And growing your team and always changing it and it's changing almost throughout the entirety of your 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 playthrough. But from my experience, that's not the case with Dragon Quest. You have all of your party members, and you can swap like characters in and out, and you have that freedom to like mess around and stuff. But like you're set, you know? And I don't know. I'm struggling to stay engaged in that. So I don't I don't know if I'm gonna like put it down. I haven't really made a decision. I just figured, hey, if I feel like it, I'll play it. If not, I won't. So I honestly may not finish that game. And Nicholas is gonna be disappointed in me for saying that. Because he loves that game and we've had some good conversations about it. But
If
that's where I am with that.
if you were to move on, what's next up on the list?
Um, so this is a game that I've been playing in lieu of Dragon Quest. So we've all heard of the Battlefront 2 remake thing, right?
Hmm.
That got me so hyped, but I was like, I'm not pre-ordering. I'm not buying on release day. And man, was I right again. Man, was I right again. Because, by the way, we have 10 minutes left in
Hmm.
here. Um, it was a buggy mess, and from my understanding, it still is.
Yep.
Um, how could they screw this up? I mean, come on, right? Like we're just upscaling to HD or whatever with, a little bit of new textures here and there. They managed to make the mechanics somehow buggier. I mean, it was perfectly fine as it was, and I get that like, adding online capabilities is probably not simple. I don't understand the ins and outs of that, but like it's such a beloved game, the original Battlefront 1 and 2, and they just completely messed it up. And then so that actually got me um hyped up to play just the OG classic version that I bought on Steam like several months ago. So I've been booting that up on my Steam Deck on my PC. I downloaded a mod that gives it like HD support, so it just looks cleaner. And I've just been playing through the campaign,
There you
and
go.
it's like, man, like it's aged so well. Like it plays so well. And part of it probably is like nostalgia bias, and I get that, but I've been having a good time with that.
No, yeah, like I do want because this isn't like a one-time thing, right? Like this launches recently have been super buggy, but like a special focus on like remasters or ports have been launching like in really, really poor conditions. And I really want some developers to kind of explain why. Because there's got to be something, right? There's got to be something that makes taking it from an old state where it was polished and not having some of these issues and bringing it today, and then all of a sudden there's something. And like you said, like, right, like I don't know how game development works, but I'd really like to understand like what it is that's causing it. Is it just having online servers? Is it the technology and how you code a game being so different now that newer systems have problems running older codes? Because it isn't the case all the time. Like I really want to know
Uh,
like
uh,
what it is because it seems
yeah,
like this would be
right.
the easiest home run where it's just port
I
it over,
know, I know.
like just convert the code. But obviously, there's got to be something else that causes all the issues, right?
Uh,
So,
Honestly, though, I know for a fact that on this one, they only had 3 servers for PC on launch.
mm,
Just not nearly enough for the
yeah,
hype
that
that
won't
this
be
game was
enough.
getting. And I
Same.
can understand, like, if that was the only issue, I'd be more okay with it. It's like, oh, hey, we
Sure.
we didn't project this kind of hype around the game. We didn't think there'd
Right.
be this much hype. So, okay, now we're investing in more servers. I'm okay with that.
Right, like
But
what happened with like Helldivers, right?
exactly, yeah.
Helldivers came out, blew up, and they like apologized. They were like, "Sorry, we didn't know that you guys were gonna like this game."
Yeah,
So,
and if anything, that's a good thing, right? Because it's like,
sure.
oh, like the game is doing better than the developers thought that they would. And then they add
Mhm.
more servers and they fix things. And Helldivers, from my understanding, is a perfectly fine now.
Yeah,
I have
it's
some friends that
running
love
well.
that game. Um, but this is like, it's not even just that. It's like buggy textures, things
Right,
glitching out, like just
right,
crazy physics and stuff. And it's honestly though, like even if I will never understand the complex, intricacies of game development, it does just boil down to it's not polished enough.
sure.
Like it just did not have enough time. Like this should have cooked in the oven for another 6 months or something.
Yeah,
And they probably had some launch window, right? It's like, oh, we got to meet this deadline or whatever. The top executives like have the power to make those decisions. Like you just can't rush these things. And now like Asper, the developer, I think it's called Asper, um, I mean, their reputation is just down the drain with this because they've completely butchered a a very, very beloved franchise.
right,
Um, just don't, just please don't, just polish games like people used to back in the day, man. It's just, yeah, don't even get me started. Um, okay, do you want to go on to your next one?
yeah, man. So I finished Red Dead Redemption 2. That review is going to be made here in a few days.
Oh yeah,
That's going
I'm
to be a
excited for
Patreon
that.
exclusive. So this is your last warning.
Paywalls, baby.
If you really want to hear that one, just go ahead and hop on over. Um, no, we're doing that just because I feel more comfortable having that behind kind of that paywall because some of our younger listeners, better for you to hear about that game a little bit more when you're a little bit older. And there's some things that I want to discuss that might not be so fit for the general audience.
Yeah,
Um,
I just want to add to that. Like
yeah, go
most
for it.
most most main game reviews we're gonna do on the main, just right here, not on Patreon.
Right,
But just like Alex said, when it comes to, mature titles and things like that, we're more comfortable not just putting that out there because we recognize that our audience is relatively young.
right, right. Um, and so I had a choice between Spider-Man Miles Morales,
Hmm.
um, Returnal, or Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. And I decided to go with Returnal first just because I'm still not ready to go back to Spider-Man. I need a little bit longer of a break before I jump back into that.
Mm-hmm.
And then with Star Wars, um, I I didn't really have a reason. I just wanted to play Returnal, so I chose that one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's so good, dude. It's so good. You wouldn't like it. It is a roguelike.
Uh-huh.
When you die, you do go back to the beginning. Um, and there are certain items that you get that are permanent upgrades. Um, but it is tough. Um, so Returnal's about this space pilot named Celine. I don't know much about the story. I'm gonna let you know that now. Because
Mm-hmm.
the story's very slow burning. I think this game is definitely a bit more focused on just the gameplay and the
Mm-hmm.
mechanics, which are really solid. She crash lands on this um, alien world, and she is investigating this like distress signal. And then when you die for the first time, you go back to the start of the crash, and you go again. The rooms in the game split up into different biomes. So the first biome that you're in is like this really dark, creepy forest, and the rooms change what order they appear in. Um, so you're getting different runs each time, right? You're getting different weapons for each run and so on and so forth. That first biome was so hard. I died easily like 50 times. Easily. Um,
So it's like third person shooting. That's kind of the perspective, right?
right. It's a third person shooter, and your enemies shoot out like Like the other comparison I give it is like a bullet hell game where like these enemies are shooting a lot of projectiles that you're avoiding.
There's segments of
Um,
that in Nier. Yeah.
yeah. It'd be similar to that. And I died like 50 times before I made it out of that first biome because you go through the biome and then you go to the boss and then you move on to the next biome. Now the second biome is like a desert place. I
Mm.
made it all the way to the boss on my first run and died. I went back through the first biome, did all my things. Now, in this game, once you've beaten a boss, you don't have to fight the boss again. And you could even just skip right ahead to the next biome if you wanted. I
Okay, that's
still
pretty
went through
cool.
the I still went through the forest anyway, upgraded my weapons, made sure I was getting enough resources to get some, because it'll be like upgrade your health by 20%, and you need these resources that you only get for killing enemies.
Mm.
Um, so I would go through, clear out some enemies, clear out some rooms, and then move on. And then I made it back to the boss of that second biome, beat him, and moved on to the third biome. And I'm still in that run right now. I haven't died in the third one yet. So it's definitely a game where the hardest part is that beginning, just where you're kind of learning
Yeah,
how to
yeah,
do
yeah.
it.
Right.
Um, but once you kind of get your feet under you and you get a good run going, you can make a lot of progress. Um, and I'm loving it, man. I seriously like it was actually a problem because I've got some midterms coming up. And this week I've been really, really disciplined. But the first week that I was playing it, I probably spent a little bit too much time playing it in comparison to
Mm.
other things I should have been doing. Um, but yeah, man, we're about to run out of time here. So we might need to come back if you have any questions. And we do have another topic, so we're gonna have to reset the meeting anyway.
Perfect. Glad you're
Yeah,
enjoying it, man.
those
We'll
are
cut
kind of
it
my
here
thoughts.
and 1 second. We'll be
Okay.
back.
A few moments later.
Yeah, glad you're enjoying Returnal.
Yeah.
So is it a long game or is it like a
So so I died a lot, right?
yeah.
I'd say that I've put maybe 10 hours in. How long to beat says the average player takes about 20 hours to see the ending.
Hmm.
However, they also say that the true ending comes on if you complete a second run through.
Mm.
And that it usually takes people about 27 hours to get there. Because by the time you've gone through the entire game the first time, you should be pretty skilled enough that your second attempt shouldn't take you many runs before you're able to
That makes sense.
clear it out. So,
Okay,
yeah,
that's respectable.
yeah.
Um, okay, what's hang on. Hang on, let me pull out my notes.
Last one is about some hardware.
So yeah, so PSVR 2. Are you are you interested in like PSVR like at all? Like let's say it was like $200. Would you buy it?
No, but there's a very specific reason why.
Okay.
It's not the lack of interest in VR. I would totally be down to invest in it. But PSVR 2 is notorious for having no games.
And that is the problem.
Like there are no games. You have Astrobot and the Horizon game. And then if you really like racing games, apparently Gran Turismo in VR is super, super cool. But that's only if you have like the full, driving rig, you have the wheel and the pedals and stuff.
And that's, I
Because,
mean, you're investing over $1,000 into a
yeah.
rig at that point.
Um, so there just isn't enough for me to be into it. I mean, the price tag alone is pretty hefty, but
Mm-hmm.
if they had 10 games that I really, really wanted to play, I'd consider it. But there
Yeah.
aren't.
Um, so the reason I bring this up is because we've seen some reports online that um I believe it's the suppliers of the PSVR hardware is reporting um that things are slowing down. They're not making a lot more of them. It kind of seems like they're struggling to get them off the shelves, and that really is the problem. So the thing that I was really excited about when PSVR 2 first came out is because the hardware technology is very good, and the price actually is pretty good as well. Like relative to the rest of the VR headset market in terms of like PC VR speaking. It has like eye tracking and stuff, which is really good. I mean, that's stuff that to my knowledge, in terms of like stuff that people generally know about. That's the kind of stuff that's in like the Apple Vision Pro, very high tech things. The hardware seems to be really good, but it's locked to the PS5. It's an additional what is it, three, four, $500?
500.
$500 on top of having a PS5. So you're buying two PS5s to play VR, and you have no games. And even the Horizon game, it's more of a like a tour simulator kind of. Like
Isn't a
you're
whole lot
not
of combat.
yeah, you're not like thrown into the world of Horizon to like freely
No.
explore and do combat and stuff. Um, it's more of like an interaction with your surroundings kind of game, which is cool, but it will get old and it's not something that you're gonna replay. Um, yeah, and there's the Astro one that you mentioned. Like, it's a big problem. And why would anybody buy it if there's no games? And I wish they would have invested a bit more to give you more of a reason, because I feel like it's a chicken or an egg situation, right? Like Sony doesn't want to invest a lot of money into developing VR titles because VR titles, it takes a lot of time and effort to make those, and they don't want to do that if not a lot of people are buying the PSVR 2. But nobody's going to buy the PSVR 2 if you don't have a lot of good games. So you have to start with good games.
Right.
Um, and they just haven't done that. So, if they would have at least put even just like two really good titles. Like let's say it's God of War, I think that would be a good one that could like turn into VR. Um and then I don't know, some kind of Final Fantasy thing or
I
whatever.
I was gonna hit him with The Last of Us. If you did a Last of Us, that would be
Oh, you're right.
crazy immersive.
Yes.
Um,
The Last of
although
Us would be
although
good.
a Final Fantasy VII remake VR,
Dude, you're holding the Buster Sword. I mean,
hmm?
that'd be pretty sick.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool.
Um, just a couple on there. And then I think if you have like two or three really solid games, that is often enough to get a lot of people on board. I mean, the
Mhm.
Nintendo Switch, I don't know. I think part of it is that it's just VR too, and a lot of people just aren't interested. Some people I know, get motion sickness from VR. I did at first until my body adjusted to it. But
Right.
it's kind of a shame. Now, one more thing with this is that um there's rumors. I don't know if this is confirmed or not. I think it's been like soft confirmed that they are opening the VR headset to the PC market potentially.
Really?
So, yeah, like Steam VR players could buy it and use it to play their Steam VR games, which would be a pretty big W. But that's just a way for them to, sell their inventory. It doesn't really solve the issue of, well, PSVR in and of itself is like very lacking in good games.
So yeah, I have a lot of thoughts about this actually. And I think you've spoken to a lot of them already. I think the biggest hurdle is the fact that the PSVR isn't its own thing. The fact that you have to have a PS5 to play it is a huge thing. Because if you look at other VR headsets,
Well, just look at the Oculus, the Meta
right?
Quest 3. The Meta Quest 3 is cheaper and you can play it standalone
Right. And it's compatible with your PC.
and PC. It can do like everything. Yeah.
So if you have a PC, it's kind of like a no-brainer. But if you just want to be getting into VR, you can definitely just buy that headset and have a good
Yeah.
time. And there's a good amount of stuff that you can do that you could get your money's worth out of it.
Yes.
The PSVR being tied to PlayStation specifically and having to have a PS5 to operate it, yeah, like $1,000 before you even buy a game, before tax. Like that's an insane amount of money to dive into something. And then yeah, like you said, like the paradoxical nature of it. Well, you don't want to develop games because you haven't sold enough, but you haven't sold enough because there's nothing to play. Like, how do you kind of break through? And Sony historically kind of has one of these types of, I say historically like it's happened a lot. There have just been a few other times, like when you think about back in the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3 days. When the
Mm-hmm.
PlayStation 3 launched, nobody wanted to buy it because it was too expensive and there
Yep.
weren't enough games. And they fixed that by having Metal Gear Solid and Uncharted 2. And a few years into the life cycle of the PlayStation 3, they had enough games, and then they had the remodel where they cut the price a little bit. And so they fixed both of those problems. And they haven't done either of those with the PSVR 2. They haven't found a way to make it cheaper because they haven't sold enough to justify it in the first place, and they haven't put enough resources in developing new games. So there's no reason to buy it.
Yeah.
In fact, it's actually kind of a meme in the PlayStation fandom that PSVR 2 even exists because it's just so not worth anything. Like, why why aren't you making certain games, not VR games, but have like VR features? Like
Mm-hmm.
even just having that would be enough, but no, like the PSVR 2, you can't plug in a game on your PlayStation 5, put on the PSVR 2 and play the game that way. Like no, like you only can play PSVR games on the VR.
Oh, so you mean it'd be cool to have a feature where you can put on the headset and have a big screen in front of you
Yeah.
to
Yeah,
play it. Now that
right?
that would be cool. That would be cool.
Right? And like again, don't know nothing about game development, don't know like the actual logistics of making that happen if that's possible, but there has to be
It
something.
it's possible.
There has to be
Yeah.
something to get someone hooked in the first place, and they just haven't been able to solve any of those options. There's no niche, there's no like niche hook, there's no
Mm-hmm.
games, and it's too expensive. And if they can't fix at least one of those things, it's not going
Yeah.
to change.
Another thing too, I heard this from another YouTuber, so I can't take credit for this, but a lot of PSVR, like original PSVR titles, like apparently there's some good ones on there. I can't even think of one off the top of my head, but port those over, right?
Hmm.
Like port them over so you, like if you don't want to spend too much money on it, just say okay, like here are the popular like original PSVR titles where those were played with controllers, so we're adapting it to have it work with the little wand things. Um, so here's like a some sort of actual video game library to get you started. Um, while you work on these other games or something. I mean, there's and yeah, that idea you had about having a big screen in front of you. I mean, honestly, like one of the uses that I for my Meta Quest 3 that I use is like I sit on the couch, I put it on, put on some headphones, massive movie screen right in front of me.
Right.
I mean, you can do that if you're hooking it up to a PS5. It's
Right.
capable of that. They just haven't developed it.
Right. And now I do want to say, as much as I just hated on it, I do think there is one silver lining to it. I do like that PlayStation isn't forcing developers to develop games for a PSVR that they obviously aren't into, right? Like, you haven't heard any of the developers complaining about, oh, well, Sony came to us and said that we had to make this game. So we're just kind of like pushing something out to kind of get past that so we can get back to making what we want. If their companies, if their developers don't want to be making VR games, then I don't think they should be forced into that. So I think it's good that there aren't any reports of that happening.
Yeah.
Um, but it is hard. Like the solution to that is, well, then you need to go find and partner with studios that are making VR games and get them to make exclusives for you. But there just hasn't, there isn't
I
enough of that
yeah.
yet to justify it. And so
I
I
honestly think that
see,
that's what needs to happen. Like they need to reach out to VR specific developers.
right,
The developers of what, like Boneworks and Bone Lab and all these other VR games because from what I've read online, developing for VR is a totally different beast. Like so many other things you have to consider. Um, that you know, I I'm not surprised that these existing 2D pancake developers like aren't, immediately hopping on board to develop VR games because Yeah. It's hard and who knows if it'll sell, it is still kind of an early VR is still early in its stages. It's come a long way, but it's still early.
I think that we are honestly a good. I think the time where VR in general will be like a mainstay of video gaming
Hmm.
is like the PlayStation 7. Like I don't even think the PlayStation 6 is soon enough.
Mm,
I think we're a good 10-ish years away before it becomes mainstream enough and budget friendly enough and just wide enough that it makes enough sense that it's a regular part of it. I think we're quite a bit away. Although, did you
I,
hear?
mhm.
Now, this is completely a rumor, and I haven't heard it very often. I've only heard it like once or twice that the reason that the Switch 2 got delayed is that they're like trying to focus pretty heavily on VR capabilities and that it would be like a near VR exclusive console. I don't think it's gonna happen, but I think that would be sick. And that would be like the biggest
What?
push into VR. Every other company's gonna be like, all right, Nintendo said, entire console VR. That's where we're going, baby.
Yeah, Nintendo is a pioneer. Wait, I haven't even heard a rumor that the Switch 2 got pushed back.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, I mean,
Are we
before,
saying 2025 now?
yeah, people are saying early 2025.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. That's the thing. That's the thing. Take your time. Don't rush it. And
Right.
I will be infinitely more happy than if you rush an incomplete product.
The thing for me on that is that there isn't anything on the Nintendo side that like is announced that I'm like, yes, I need this to come. Like there isn't a new Mario, there isn't a new
Yeah.
Zelda, no news on Metroid 4, no news on any new IPs. Like if they need to take an extra 6 months to develop, that's fine because I don't even know what I'm missing out on. So,
Yeah. I we're gonna have a bit of a drought, boys. It's I don't think we're gonna get major Nintendo releases until the Switch 2 comes out. I mean, we've got some big hitters, heavy hitters, Mario Thousand Year Door and
mhm.
stuff coming out, but
Lot of long time wants, right?
yeah, yeah.
So,
I don't think we're getting anything big for the rest of the console generation.
yeah. We didn't plan on it. I have one other topic I want to talk about. Is that
Go
okay?
for it. Yeah.
We need to talk about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth
Oh,
because this thing, dude, is so polarizing. I have heard some people loving it. I have heard some people hating it. I've heard
Rebirth?
some people saying there are good and bad parts to it, and we just need to talk about it. We just need to, okay? So what have you heard about this game so far?
I have only heard good things. Granted, I haven't been going out of my way to search for things about it. I've just
Mhm.
heard from Nicholas playing it. Yeah, and then I've heard like people just say, "Oh, it's great, it's cool." I
Okay.
don't know much, honestly.
So here's what I've heard. And Nicholas, you like it? That's great. I'm not trying to rat on this because I haven't played it. I have no personal opinion. I'm just going to share what I've heard.
Okay.
Going into this game, I wanted very, very few things from this. I wanted there to be less padding, and I wanted them to have the same combat system. That's all I wanted because I don't need very much else from this game. And I got one of those things. Um, Everyone is talking about how great the combat is. No one has a bad thing to say about how the game plays as far as when you're fighting. Like
Yeah.
everything that they had in that first game is there, better fleshed out, better developed. It's so I'm super stoked about that.
Okay, I think I
However,
know where you're going with this. Keep going.
however, all the things I've heard about, like just how far it gets, how long it takes to get places, or the quests being very monotonous and kind of repetitive, and all that stuff. And then when they announced that this game was going to be open world, people were like, "Oh, well, what are you going to do? Like, how are you going to fill that space with meaningful stuff to do?" And from
Mm-hmm.
what I've heard, they haven't been very successful with that. A lot of
Mm,
people feel that the quests get boring and repetitive very fast. And so, like a lot of people now this next statement is based off of trophy data, which isn't an infallible, perfect sense
right,
of data, right?
right.
But like the trophies that you get just for completing story missions, it's I think it was sitting at like 40% of players that started Final Fantasy VII Rebirth made it to the halfway point in the story within now almost a month of the game being out. Um,
Mm.
so it seems like a lot of people are kind of bouncing off or starting it and either getting preoccupied with other things or just stopping entirely. We don't really know, but like either way,
Is that a pretty slow pace? I'd be curious to see what that statistic, that same one was for the first FF7
the
remake.
first one, the first one was, from what I understand, the halfway story point is about like 2/3 of all players hit that point. So
Okay.
it's a pretty big
That is
decrease.
that's a big difference, yeah.
Um, so I don't know. I'm very concerned about this because, as I mentioned, I love the music and the combat.
It's playing
I
in my
did,
mind right now.
but I did feel in places that it was too slow, that I didn't like how much you were just kind of walking around and moving around, and it felt kind of meaningless. There was large stretches between exciting things happening.
Mm.
Um, and it seems like that has only become more the case in this game. So
That is a
I don't
shame.
really know what to do because if I'm going to spend 70 hours playing a game and 20 hours of it is going to be in one of the best and most fun to play combat models, then great.
Hmm.
But how much time on the flip side am I spending doing stuff that is boring and monotonous to get to the good stuff? You know?
Yeah, is it just stuff? Is it just padding? Yeah, for the game.
Right.
So is it an actual open world? I mean, it's not like Breath of the Wild, right? Like,
No, no, no. So you still have the story missions that you have to complete in a certain order,
yeah.
but there's spaces where it opens up and it's just side quest after side quest after side quest and a lot of exploration base, and you can go a long stretch without doing any story missions just because of how much other side
Okay.
content it is. So maybe it's not open world. That's the term that I've heard used a lot, but it doesn't
Hmm.
really make sense to use it in the literal definition. So
I guess more open than,
yeah,
you know.
it's not nearly as linear as the first one was. Because that first game is pretty linear.
I I honestly did not mind the linear aspect of it at all.
I don't either. I
I
don't
thought it
mind
was
linear
perfectly fine.
games.
Yeah.
Um, because they have those two chapters where it is very, all right, you can either move on to the next part of the story, or if you want to spend these next few hours doing some side quests, you can totally do that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
But it seems like that's a lot more of the game now. So I don't know. I'm
So
really conflicted.
I was over um at my in-laws' house and watching Nicholas play this game for a bit. This is the only portion that I watched him play. He did a little bit of combat, and I was like immediately like, oh, that's just like remake. You know, I'm so glad that that's the same. Looked great, sounded great, you know, fantastic. There was this section, and Nicholas, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this because you're the one that was actually playing, and it sounded like you were having a decent a time with it. But it was a segment where I don't want to spoil anything, so I'm just gonna say that you're going around, you're gathering people from different parts of the city, um, and you have to look around and find the right people. So it's kind of like a fetch questy, you know, kind of tedious seeming to me. Not something I would personally enjoy. And then once you have like your group together, it was this like musical performance thing that you were doing. And this is basically like a, thinking Kingdom Hearts 2, for example, like Atlantis. The timing the buttons on the music on the beats and stuff. Um, and it was pretty, to watch, like the cuts and the angles, and you see Cloud doing this and that, and but the gameplay, I mean, it's something that I would have done just to get it over with. It's not something it's like, oh my gosh, this is Final Fantasy, let's go, like that's not what nobody's there for that, right?
Right.
Am I right? I don't know. Like maybe I'm sure some people enjoy it. Nicholas, please let us know your thoughts on this, because like,
Yeah.
does the game feel padded, relative to, especially compared to the first like FF7 remake? Because yeah,
Right. Like,
yeah,
and that's where it's hard for me because I didn't grow up on Final Fantasy VII, right? Like my exposure to these characters was Kingdom Hearts, right? Like
same.
I don't have a tie to the story necessarily. Um, and yeah, like I, I don't know. I don't know if the amount of time spent on that game would be worth like what I get out of it, you know?
Yeah, yeah, and that is one thing to consider. Yeah, because if you're somebody that grew up on FF7 and you're invested in the story and you know that they're changing parts of the story and you just want to know what's happening, I'm sure you might be more than happy to play through those sections and just enjoy the story, right? Um, but yeah, I will tell you, man, like no matter what, I what's your next game after Returnal? Because I'm thinking it's time to play as Cal Kestis,
Um, I'm
aka Alex Herschel.
I'm considering it. I I don't know, just because I know that I am not buying another game. I'm
Yeah,
not gonna do it.
you've already got a good library.
It's well, I didn't even tell you. No one even knows. I bought a Highland Song a few days ago or a few weeks ago for the Switch. Played through
Oh,
that. That was a good time. I don't really have much to say on it. It wasn't nearly as good as I was hoping for, but
mm,
um so I know that it's between that and Miles Morales and the Kingdom Hearts games. Um So it will probably end up being that just because I know what I'm getting with Miles Morales. It's more
yeah.
Spider-Man,
Hmm.
and I'm okay waiting to play that. Whereas Jedi Fallen Order, I
Oh,
kind of
brother,
wanna,
it's a good game, man.
I kind of want to throw a lightsaber around a bit. So
Yeah, it's a good game.
yeah, yeah.
Well, anything else?
Hmm.
Wrap it up?
Yeah, I think we're good to go.
Well, everybody, let us know your thoughts. If you played Rebirth, please let us know. Um, the only ones I can think of off the top of my head that have played it are probably Nicholas and Christian. Send us emails. You can always chat with us through Discord. Discord is great because then you can get everybody else's thoughts too, not just us. Special thanks to our Patreon supporters. We've got Joshua, Tyler, Grandpappy, Jay Maurer, aka Big Bear, Nicholas. Right? It's everybody. Thanks everyone. You are wonderful, and the wait for the next episode should not be as long.
No, no, it shouldn't
Yeah.
be.
We
So
just kind of had a crazy few weeks. Both of us did.
yeah,
So,
yeah. So
okay.
yeah, we'll see
Talk
you
to you
soon.
next. Yep. Talk to you next
Cool.
time.